Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. My name is Letitia Grenier. I'm the director of the Water Policy Center at the Public Policy Institute of California, and I'm so pleased to welcome all of you to our 2025 annual water conference. We do have the sound of water today in Sacramento. An atmospheric river decided to come to our water conference this year, which is very on brand. We appreciate that. But it also makes it hard to get here, so we thank you so much for everybody coming, and we hope the flooding is definitely not too bad out there, but we appreciate the water for California. We are delighted to present today's conversation on California water and a changing federal partnership. First, the Water Policy Center's Associate Director, Caity Peterson, and Research Fellow, will give a presentation on this year's brief. Then Senior Fellow and one of the founding members of the Water Policy Center, Jeff Mount, will moderate a discussion with leaders from around California. The panelists will be Katrin Chappell, Associate Director of the California Water Program at the Nature Conservancy, Allison Collins, Manager of the State Water Project Division of Integrated Sciences and Engineering at the California Department of Water Resources, David Guy, President of the Northern California Water Association, Ken Michael, President and CEO of the Bowles Farming Company, and Pete Silva, President and CEO of Silva International. Thank you so much to our panelists for being here today. We would also like to thank the sponsors of the Water Policy Center for their underwriting support. This support makes it possible for these events to be free and available to the public. These organizations are listed on the screens and on the program on your tables. And before we begin, a few important items to mention. For those of you who are not familiar with PPIC, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit policy research institute with offices in San Francisco and Sacramento. As a public charity, PPIC does not take or support positions on any ballot measure or legislation, nor does it support, endorse, or oppose any political parties or candidates for public office. At the Water Policy Center, our mission is to connect objective research and data with real-world water management challenges for the benefit of California's communities, economy, and ecosystems. A few copies of the California Water and Changing Federal Partnership report are available at your tables, along with a QR code where you can access today's program agenda and panelist bios. And I'll just mention, for those of you who are looking at an old version of the agenda, Jeff and I switched roles because I have a little bit of a cold. So I'm doing the opening and Jeff is doing the moderating of the panel later, just in case that's confusing. You can visit the publications table located outside in the foyer for additional PPIC Water Policy Center publications. And at the end of today's program, it's your chance to participate. There will be time to respond to audience questions. For those of you here in the room in Sacramento, please raise your hand, and PPIC staff will come to you with a microphone. For those of you who are joining us virtually, please send an email to ppiceventquestions@gmail.com. PPIC staff will be monitoring the questions that come in and incorporating them as much as possible. And lastly, if you haven't already, please silence your cell phones. Now, on to the program. I'm pleased to turn it over to the PPIC Water Policy Center's Associate Director, Caity Peterson. Take it away, Katie.
All right, thank you, Letitia, and thank you all for being here today. It's my pleasure to give the opening presentation for this year's conference. And my job for the day is to set the stage for this morning's conversation on the topic of advancing research during uncertain times. So let's just start with that, shall we? Why uncertain? Why exactly are we calling our event this? Well, it's quite simple, and I think it's top of everybody's minds at the moment, and that's because the federal government is our biggest partner in funding, in managing, and in research for our water system. We rely on the federal government for so much, for critical data, for services, for the expertise of agency staff, and for money, to be quite honest. They're a big funder and investor in California's water. Now that partnership is changing. Our biggest partner is undergoing a massive downsizing effort. We're just coming out of the longest government shutdown on record. And we don't quite know yet where things are going to land on a number of fronts. So that really means the word of the day, and for the past couple of months is uncertainty. These conditions create a lot of question marks for how we work with the federal government, or work around it, as the case may be. It could create new efficiencies, new opportunities, or it could result in new challenges that we need to be prepared for and know how we're going to respond. So let me start by underscoring why this is such a big deal, just by showing a couple of examples of the key ways that California works with the federal government to run our water systems. And the first one is a big one and an obvious one: water supply. Dams, infrastructure, some of our biggest projects. This is Shasta, the Central Valley Project, owned and operated by the federal government. There's the Colorado River, where the federal government's such an important player in the negotiations. And then there's the money side, as I mentioned. The federal government's such a big investor in our supply and management for our water. I'm thinking of grants and programs like EQIP and Water Smart, just to name a few. Then there are our headwater forests. We've experienced some really terrible wildfire seasons in this state in recent years, and this year was no exception. I think top of mind for everyone would be the terrible fires down in LA earlier in this year. Lest we forget, the federal government owns and manages around half of the land in our headwater forests. That makes them a key partner for managing fire risk, for dealing with emergencies when they do happen, and for protecting the water infrastructure that stands in the way of fire. Flood management. The feds are everywhere in flood management, whether it's preparing for floods, dealing with them in the moment, and recovering from disasters. They fund flood management infrastructure. They manage our reservoirs when we're in flooding situations. Then there's FEMA, there's flood insurance. The list goes on from there. In this state, we're really lucky to have incredible natural ecosystems that support some of the richest biodiversity in the nation, such as this very charismatic fish on the slide here. The feds play a very important role in protecting this biodiversity. They basically make the rules for our endangered species and implement them alongside the state. And they also make major investments in habitat restoration up and down the state. And then finally, there's monitoring. As we know in this room, the California water system is complicated. We have to move a lot of water long distances. We also have crazy weather, as those who drove to Sacramento this morning can attest. And we need data and information to be able to deal with that. Things like how much water is in our rivers and streams at a given moment. When is the next atmospheric river coming our way? And the federal agencies are where we get our information from on those things. So not to belabor the point too much, I think we're getting the picture of just how important our federal partners are from top to bottom in our water system. So now that I've gone through all that, I want to shift gears a little bit. What we envisioned for this conference was to talk about research for policy. So in this context of all the federal changes that I mentioned, why talk about research at a time like this? California faces many challenges with regard to water. This is well known to this audience. We have to bring our groundwater basins into balance. We're dealing with a changing climate, including more intense droughts. Extreme floods and wildfires are becoming more common, and we have to ensure safe and affordable water for all, not to mention the major investments needed to the water grid so it can handle our 21st century climate. And now we have to do all of this with a federal partnership that's more and more of a question mark. So full disclosure, before I go any further, I am a researcher. Research is my job. I love what I do, and I like to think that it's important as well. But in this case, I really do think that research is the secret sauce. It's important at any time, and now it's more important than ever, because we need to do more with less, and we need to stay ahead of the curve. So what to do about all of this? We called on our research network to talk it through, and we decided to basically gather a bunch of geeks and nerds into the same room this past April in Sacramento with our partners at the Secure Water Future program, led by Josh Fierce at UC Merced. So this was all Josh's idea. These are the leading thinkers in water and water policy. And we asked them, what does California most need from research to support effective water policy in this moment when we're seeing such dramatic changes? And this is what we came up with. Pretty simple, really. It boiled down to 3 areas: measuring things, paying things, and doing things. Now, I originally wrote the slide this way as a joke, but my team said that I should just go for it. So here we go. Measuring things. We need good accounting systems so that we can track where water is, where it's going, and so that we can act on that information in close to real time. It sounds basic, that's because it is. But we don't have the systems in place to track our water. Then, paying for stuff. Coming up with good ideas is not enough. We also need to know where the money is going to come from. And then we just need to get stuff done. For a researcher, that often means building good models that inform planning and management. More on that later. Let's start with priority number 1. It is also admittedly the least glamorous priority, but it is very critical. Good accounting systems. Accounting means measuring where water is, where it's going, and how much of it, and what do we do about that. So why is this a research priority? If we don't have good information systems, then everything downstream from there suffers. Planning, management, and emergency services included. Now, California has invested a lot in accounting. We are better equipped than most, but we also face bigger challenges. And now we're trying to do more. That said, we still don't always know where our water goes, and we don't have what we need to manage our water rights system. So that's why we need to modernize. And we can do this. California is the center of innovation. But then, of course, it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago that we had a fully digitized record of all the water rights in the state. So there's a lot more to do. And to cite just one more example before I move on, we discovered in the last drought just how important accounting systems are. If you'll recall, at that time, ecosystems in the Delta were suffering, salinity was becoming a concern, so water was released from our reservoirs to help with that. And a lot of that water never made it to its destination. We didn't have the capabilities to understand where it went. To manage water with precision, we need more precise accounting systems, and this is particularly important to protect water that we're setting aside for the environment. Second priority, paying for stuff. Everything costs money, nothing is free, and water especially can cost a lot. I'll give you just one example. Cleaning up forever chemicals like PFAS in drinking water in Orange County. That alone is expected to cost nearly $2 billion in the next 30 years. That's just one thing in one county. So you can see the scale of the problem. And then right now, there's of course less money to go around. So we need to be smarter with our money. How can research help with this? Why is this a research priority? Well, research can help guide our decisions. Where should we invest? Where are we going to get the most bang for our buck, or ROI? And are there ways to invest that aren't just going by the same playbook? We need new ideas. Research can help us understand how to tap into the power of markets to reduce the costs of needed adaptations. And it can pinpoint how to do this while safeguarding affordability for the most vulnerable water users. Third priority for research, we need to get stuff done. And this means being the bridge from planning what to do to navigating the how to do it. For this purpose, researchers frequently use models, which are just simplified versions of our world and the systems and processes in it. Models may sound boring, and I should know, I have to talk about them a lot, but they're actually essential. If you like to check your weather app to see if you're going to be able to get back to your car without getting wet. If you like to be warned about when flooding might affect your area. If you're interested in knowing how water might be parceled out during a drought, then you might be into models, and you didn't even know it. Another thing, big projects take years, they cost a lot of money. So testing things quickly and cheaply before we go all the way down that road is something models are really good at. So they're a key piece of helping us plan, helping us build and run a more resilient water system. The problem is, we often make one model to deal with one problem, and we need models that will talk to one another better and help us manage projects that are more complex, that can quantify multiple benefits, and that are just more ambitious. A lot of our models for flood management, for example, they're all predicated on historic conditions, and those conditions no longer apply. So we need new tools to tackle new problems. So let's summarize. Hopefully I've convinced you that the need for good research, especially if that research supports informed and effective policy, is greater than ever. We can't rise to the challenges in our water systems without research. We identified 3 areas that we think need special emphasis: measuring stuff, or modernizing our accounting systems so we can make good decisions and good policy; paying for water, or figuring out realistic ways to get all those needed investments done; and just accomplishing things, being the bridge, thinking differently about ways to build resilience, using more forward-looking and more integrated models of our water systems. Now, to bring all of this back to the current moment and what I opened this presentation with, we rely on the federal government for much of this. The federal government provides funding, key data inputs, infrastructure, expertise, all of these things that keep our water systems functioning, and that honestly provides the foundation for a lot of the research that we do. That leaves us with one key lingering question, and that is, how do we safeguard the functions that the federal government usually provides while continuing to build resilience and continuing to make progress on our ambitious goals? So now, fortunately, I get to leave and hand the difficult task of answering that question over to today's speakers on our panel. So now is the moment when I can hand things over to our fearless moderator, Jeff Mount, Senior Fellow at the Water Policy Center, and our panelists. Welcome to the stage. Thank you, everyone.